Good afternoon. We'll call the March 30th informational meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the City Council staff report.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a quick update and to remind the public mostly that we're having the Districting Commission meeting Tuesday, tomorrow night on the 31st between 6:30 and 8:30 here at the Carnegie Town Hall, which is at 235 West 10th Street. And then again, they'll be hearing from the public on Saturday, April 4th from 10 to noon, again here at the Carnegie Town Hall. If you have any questions or want to know more about those meetings, please go to siouxfalls.org and look under City Council. You'll find the information about the maps that are being available to the public, and then those that are recommended. And if you need to email the commission for any reason, please email at clerks@siouxfalls.org. Thank you very much.
Okay, next on the agenda is Mayor Munson. Is there anybody here from the mayor's office? Seeing no one, we'll move on to Audit Committee, which is a no report. We'll have a presentation from Rich Oaksold, the internal auditor, in a few minutes. Fiscal Committee?
No report.
Land Use?
No report.
Public Service?
No report.
Okay. This is easy. Open discussion. Mr. Jameson? Councilor Jameson?
Thanks, Sitting in Chair, Mr. Costello. Just wanted to update the rest of the council on our community forum that happened a couple Saturdays ago. We had a great turnout, but really wanted to update a couple of the councilors who were unable to make it. We've got a list of about 5 or 6 items that this group determined were priority items as a focus for maybe stimulating the economy in Sioux Falls and or for sure sustaining it. I just want to share this list with you. We're going to get you a copy of the list along with all the ideas that came out in the discussion, but just real quick, number 1 was improving our infrastructure, our roads, making sure that they're in good shape. We continue to invest in those roads. Second was finishing the Greenway project, creating an event center, and improving other facilities like our library and airports, hotels and things. Third was kind of interesting, is developing an economic strategy, a long-term economic strategy for Sioux Falls, which is different than Forward Sioux Falls and the Chamber and all those groups. It's kind of a cohesive capture of all these groups working together. Fourth was affordable housing. Fifth and sixth were really tied, but fifth was talking about easing regulatory restrictions on maybe if you're building a new home in an area like Pettigrew Heights, that the setback rules are different than what's currently allowed. The other one was a real estate tax discretionary formula that was new. Apparently, as cities like Brookings, I think there's others who incorporate this, but it's a stepping program for if you build a new home, that your property taxes get incrementally increased and they don't start off at 100%, just to help stimulate new home construction and building. But my thought here really is just real quick, I know we've got a full schedule, but I'd like to just somehow ratify this list with the rest of the council, and if need be, maybe we create a resolution that the council adopts these as priorities, but that might be a little far to stretch, I don't know yet, but I really just wanted to update the rest of you about the meeting that occurred, and I know some of you were there and we had a lot of great participation, but I think my intentions are to really try to get the whole council involved and start executing what we can and really just start implementing what we can as well. So I just want to update everybody about that meeting. Any questions, thoughts?
Councilor Knudsen?
Councilor Jameson, first of all, I just always appreciate your enthusiasm and positive attitude about moving our city forward. And although I was unable to be here that day because I was out of town, I was following everything very closely and have, followed all of the, all the stories about it and so forth in any way. And I think it was very positive forum and so forth. But I'm like a real practical person here, and I guess I'd just like to say that I do think that at least 4 out of 6 ideas are just very, very good ideas that we've been working on pretty much nonstop since I've been a counselor, and I've been here almost 7 years. So to me, they are all very positive, and I am as interested in all of those, at least 4 of them, as anyone else who attended the forum that day. And so, but from a very practical standpoint, to move those forward, I mean, is obviously we need, the revenue to do so, because I think there's great support. I mean, I'm not speaking for any other counselor up here, but I mean, not specifically anyway, but I would just say overall that there's tremendous support up here around this table from, almost all of us on an event center, on the Greenway, on infrastructure, and on other facilities like, for instance, a West Branch library or, whatever, when you said other facilities. So to me, these are all very, they're not new ideas at all, but they're good ideas. They're great ideas. But as a city council, I think it's very important that we continue to make them a reality. I think it's okay to talk about this stuff, but there's a point sometimes where, I'm ready to, I don't think as a city council right now that there is the money there to go any faster than we are on any of these. I still wish we'd find a philanthropist that would step up and help us get an event center built before I'm off the city council in 13 and a half months. So, I guess that's what I'm saying. As a team, to me a resolution is, it's not harmful. It's meaningless to me, but it's not harmful. But to me, as a team, we need to just continue to find a way, especially working with the South Dakota legislature, to find the money to move those great projects forward. Because otherwise, I think we're just talking about these topics. And then, as far as the easing regulations, I am no expert on regulations, and I'm willing to consider at an ordinance level up here, around here. Clearly we don't need 90 citizens to do that now. If there are any regulations on the books that are unreasonable or ridiculous or whatever, or, we have the power to change those. I worry about, I'm all for economic development, but I worry at what point we can kind of discriminate, so to speak, on regulations, and safety is an important factor. And then I have not visited with anyone, and you probably have or will be, as far as like the real estate tax bit. I can't imagine that the school board members or administrators would have any interest in that, but I've not visited with them. So those are just my thoughts from one of the counselors who was not there. But again, I appreciate your enthusiasm and interest in moving our city forward.
Any other comments? Councilor Jameson.
Just a real quick follow-up. It is true that a lot of the items that were discussed and came up are things that we're already working on. The city's been doing a great job of making them happen, especially improving the infrastructure. Number one item on the list, I think it's pretty crystal clear that the council has supported additional funding to improve the streets. I guess maybe if anything, it's just that we notify the rest of the people, public, that we are on the right track. We're doing a lot of the right things as we move forward, but we're not going to forget about this list and how important it is, and that every decision we make, if there's a way that it can impact, the economy in Sioux Falls in the right direction, we should do that. And I think that's what this list does. This gives us kind of a basis of making our future decisions, even though some of them are going to be out of our hands, somewhat based on the budget, but there are policies and things that we can do and change ourselves if we seem fit. So, but duly noted. Dee.
Councilor Knudsen.
And just one other thought, and I know, Councilor Jameson, that you and I are very much on the same page on this. And again, I'm, with you for getting these projects done when we can find the money to get them done. But again, now that the legislature is over for this year, I don't think we can work too hard with our legislators, not just in Sioux Falls, but in the other larger communities in the state and the smaller communities too. And of course, and work very, very closely with Municipal League, and we have a superstar counselor Vernon Brown, who's on that, state board. And I mean, I just think we can't work hard enough, as far as I'm concerned, to try to get a plan in place with many legislators, like more than two-thirds, to allow us to increase the sales tax for a very short period of time, a small amount, whether it's 0.5%, 1/4%, 0.5%, or 1%. And I mean, to me, they just came home today, so it's time to start putting them on notice that we want local control in our communities.
Any other comments? Well, if nothing else, that we've got a reaffirmation of the things that we've been working on, and the point that this leads to some actionable movement from the council. That'll be a very positive thing. Thanks, Councilor Jameson. Any other open discussion? Okay, we'll move into the presentations, and the first is going to be from Ide Bailey, the results of the 2008 audit. Gene, are you going to start us off, or?
I'm going to start us off.
Okay.
I'm Brad Witzel. I think I've met most of you before, been in front of you a couple times. I am chairman of the audit committee here at the City of Sioux Falls. My time in front of you today will be very short. Just as a reminder to the council, the audit committee is now responsible for the hiring of the external auditor and for the performance of the external auditor. Last summer or fall, we brought to you a proposal to hire Ide Bailey again for another 3-year term for the external audit, and the city council approved that. So we did move forward with Ide Bailey, and they have finished their external audit. So what I want to do today is introduce Ty Ingles to you. I think Ty's no stranger to all of you, and he's going to talk about how the audit went this year. So, Ty?
Thank you, Brad, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. It seems these years just go faster every year. It seems like I was just here. But, again, on behalf of Ide Bailey and our staff, just wanted to present to you at a very high level our findings. You should have in front of you an audit committee communication letter. As Brad indicated, now we are engaged by the independent audit committee, and so we report to them both in the planning stage and then during the course of the audit, and then prior to completion, keep them in the loop. And we receive reports from Rich Oaksel and the internal audit group throughout the year as far as things that might impact our work at the end of the year. So you have in front of you a relatively thick document, I think, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR. And we're engaged to provide you with an opinion on those financial statements. And also, the city receives approximately $9 million this last year of federal financial assistance. And so a big piece of what we do is to provide an opinion on the city's compliance with federal laws and regulations, and then to provide you with some comments on internal controls, policies and procedures over expending those funds. So I'm pleased to report today that we're providing an unqualified opinion. There aren't any exceptions or findings to the financial statements. And also, as a result of our work on the federal awards, that $9 million worth of funds, there's no deficiencies in internal control that we're reporting, and we're not reporting any findings or question costs in association with our audit of those awards. As a part of our responsibility to the audit committee, our responsibility to you and the users of these financials is that we're providing reasonable assurance. And that's intended to be at a very high level, that what's contained in those financial statements in that CAFR is in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. And every year, the management, Gene and his team, send that report on to the Government Finance Officers Association, and it gets reviewed for really best practices. And each year for a number of years, including 2007, your management has received the Certificate of Excellence for best practices in financial reporting, and it gets reviewed by, in very great detail, by people who work with cities and governmental reporting. So it speaks very highly of the work that they do. And also the fact that we're here in front of you on March, whatever today is, March 30th, for an entity of this size to get its arms around the financial statements and to be able to have this final document in front of you so that you can use it as a tool as you go forward early in the year. Some years ago, this process was being completed in July and August, and so now to have this done now, I think speaks very well to the quality of the information that you receive throughout the year. There weren't any new accounting principles or change in applications, and so that was a bit of a nice break this year, so no new standards that we had to deal with. As far as the audit itself, we take what we call a risk-based approach in our planning processes, and based on what Rich and his group do, really try to hone in our audit on areas where we think there could be the highest risk of material misstatement to the financial statements. And those are generally the larger areas, and then also areas that deal with estimates, where there could be bias or judgment involved to perhaps manipulate or make an error in the financial statements, things like depreciation or liabilities with the landfill and closure costs, things dealing with your health insurance plans, your defined benefit pension plans. And again, we didn't find any management bias related to those areas, and generally, as it relates to retirement and health insurance, your management engages specialists. So you have independent people really coming up with those numbers. There were no difficulties that we encountered in the course of our audit. On page 2 of our letter, you'll note that in that second paragraph there was one adjustment of just under $1.3 million related to an interest reversal, but again, we feel that the policies and procedures in effect would have caught those things. There weren't any disagreements or unresolved issues as it relates to our work. We do obtain we asked the mayor and the staff to sign a representation letter saying that they're responsible for the financial statements and for key areas in those financial statements. And we're not aware of any consultations that management had with other accountants, second opinions, if you will. The major programs that we looked at this year, again, if you receive over $500,000 of federal financial assistance, this year the city received just under $9 million. We look at the major programs, and those generally are those that are over $500,000, and those programs get tested in great detail. And there were 3 of those related to transit, the health department, and then an HIV grant. And again, there were no findings or questioned costs. So again, we want to thank Gene and Tom Huber and the team in the finance department for their assistance in getting this done. And as Brad mentioned, this is the first of our 3 years to be the auditors. We've done some personnel rotation. Dave Steen out of our Minneapolis office is actually the engagement partner. Dave practices pretty exclusively with governments and municipalities. Melissa White from our Aberdeen office was the audit manager who we brought on the year before, again, who deals primarily in these areas. So bringing in different personnel, I'm just here to take the credit or the blame, depending on how this all goes, but I'd be happy to respond to any questions, concerns, or comments that you folks have. Kermit.
Yes. In this last audit, did you become involved in any cash transactions or anything like that to make sure everything is going well? The primary purpose of our audit is to determine if the financial statements are fairly stated. Rich and his group did perform, detailed tests in a number of areas, and we rely some on that work. We do, as a part of our internal control testing, we do test a selection of cash receipts that come in to the finance office to ensure that all the proper approvals are in place for accounting for those. So, yeah, we do a sample. Certainly it's limited based on the large number of transactions, but there were no discrepancies or differences that we noted.
Councilor Anderson?
Other than doing the audits and working with our audit committee, is there any other services your company provides for the city?
Yeah, we report to the audit committee if, we have to remain independent in accordance with our professional standards. The only matter that I'm aware of, there was some consultation as it related to some tax matters, but it wasn't
beyond that, there weren't any consulting services provided.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Staggers, regarding your question on cash transactions, is there a certain concern or area that you were curious about specifically, or?
Well, I guess sometimes I'm concerned that, every year we do meet the standards, for accounting and things like that. But, we also had that situation that took place, with the county. And I guess that was the thing that was standing out of my mind, that we can have, a very good report, but then we can still have this kind of issue taking place.
Councilor Benninger?
I understand Mr. Staggers' concern. I would also reiterate the fact that that's one of the reasons why we began an internal audit procedure and why we have internal auditors, which are outside our city employment operation, that are operated and used as independent part of what we do as an organization, and why that is such an important factor in how we can be assured that some of these things are being followed, and we can take credit for, frankly, beginning that process and making it happen.
Any other comments? Well, Ty, on behalf of the City Council, thank you very much for your work with Ide Bailey. We appreciate all the effort that went into the audit, and thanks to the Department of Director of Finance and everybody there for the work on the financial statements, the fact that we only had one minor adjustment, and I think that's probably the first adjustment we've had in a number of years. So that speaks very high. We appreciate all the work that goes into those.
Thank you.
Next, Director Roanhorse will talk about the monthly update financials.
Just to go back on the CAFR for the adjustment that was made, what that was, if you recall, we operate on a cash basis throughout the year, and then we bring it into an accrual basis at the end of the year, and then, but when you do that, then you have to reverse those entries in the next year. And our software system does not have an automatic function that when you put in an adjusting entry that it would automatically adjust in the next cycle or reverse, and it just flat got missed because it was just another item that we should have had a box that we could have checked or something, but it's not there. Our software doesn't allow that at this point.
So that
just a plug.
That new accounting software that you're looking at will have that feature?
It will definitely. Okay, there's not a whole lot to report. We're in the month of February, so there's not, it's just not been that much activity to report. We're well within our standards on page 1 in our reserves, 35% and 25%. We're well within those numbers. Something on page 2 that's a little bit of a change. This is the CIP sales tax, and you'll note there are now 4 columns there. This thing is like talking to a barrel. There's 4 columns there. There's one now called arterial streets, and what you'll note under there's a line called taxes, and there's $151,000. Is everyone following me?
On what page, please?
Page 2. Under the budget status.
Yeah.
First line item there is taxes. It's $151,000. That's a year-to-date number. That is the amount of the .08 that we collected through February, through the end of February, and that is the amount that was primarily part of the agreements that were reached with the council and developers and that, on how we were going to deal with arterial streets and building that. So that's $151,000. The next item down, special assessments, platting fees, $1,900. That's all the platting fees that have been collected through January and February. So it's not a real big number, but we'll keep reporting this on it so you can see what's happened with the .08, and that it is being segregated properly to be used for arterial streets. But right now it's pretty slow going. The other thing, then, I'd like to point out, if you go to page 9, well, The sales tax, I'll talk about that later because I've got March numbers and you see those instead of February's, and this one's got the February numbers in it. Go to page 9, and this is our summary of the capital improvement programs that we have for the year, all of the projects, and you'll notice a number of these, quite a few of them, have a grayed out line over them. Those are the projects that have been identified that will be held back if we don't get the tax revenue that we anticipated in the budget. So that is part of our defensive line and what we'll do. Now, this thing will change from month to month as far as the projects, because directors will identify a project that they want to do something with, and they'll take one of these off, but they got to put the same amount of dollars back some way, so that the kind of dollars stay constant, but it can move around depending on the what projects the director thinks is most appropriate to be dealing with. So I thought you might find that particularly interesting reading going forward. Other than that, on the financial statements themselves, there's really nothing of any consequence to report. You'll note that our total outstanding and/or authorized debt is at $269 on page 16. The amount outstanding is at $228 million. That difference is primarily the Lewis and Clark transaction at this point. We still have, I believe it's like $30 million to pay to Lewis and Clark yet. I think I'm right on that number. And then on the sales tax, back in February, you'll note that our sales tax came in. It was actually down 1.9%. Now we got the March numbers, and we got our last check last week. I believe it was Thursday, and we are now up 2.0%. So I don't anyone take this as a trend by any means. It is not a trend, but at least it is good news that we're on the upside, not on the downside. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. As I've stated earlier, the first 6 months of the year aren't particularly indicative of what's going to happen the rest of the year, but at least it's going in the right direction. So, is there any other questions I might answer?
Gene, we were talking earlier before the meeting about the way we get our payments from the state and how we get essentially 2 checks a month, and we now have received the second one for March. Can you just talk a little bit how that is possible, that we've got the March numbers before it's actually the end of the month? Because in essence, we're going on a cash basis.
You're on a cash basis. The numbers that you see in March here that are up 2% are actually supposed to be February sales. We think they primarily are February sales, but because of the way this thing kind of bounces around, we're not always sure that we're getting clean cutoffs in PIR. We get our money all in eventually, but it's not. I'm not sure it's as clean a cutoff reporting-wise as it could be, because it does bounce around a lot, and I wouldn't think with the amount of tax that we collect and that it would bounce around the way it does, but nonetheless it does. But yeah, you're looking at this on a cash basis.
So we've taken we got a check on the 12th and we got another check on the 25th, and so we
approximately.
And so that those are March, and then at the end of the year
that's February sales,
right,
reported in March,
that we received payment on in March,
right.
And then at the end of the year we roll back the first check in January.
The first check in January gets rolled back into the prior year,
and which has been our practice for years.
Long time.
Okay.
Before my time, before I started here.
Okay. Councilor Staggers?
Yes, Gene, you said we have authorized debt at $269 million. Is that right?
Yes.
That 269, does that include? I just assume it doesn't include that $42 million that we passed for the levees and the bridges. Is that right, Mike? It doesn't include that.
Well, we haven't floated those bonds, so.
But it is authorized.
It is authorized.
But it doesn't include that. Is that correct?
Let me look here.
Because my number was over $300 million if we include that.
I don't believe it is in here at this point.
Okay. And so the $12 million
if it's different than that, I'll get you an email on it.
Okay. And obviously then the 12 million for the bridge is not in there either, huh, for the 269?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Director Owenhurst? Councilor Brown?
Gene, can you elaborate a bit on the CIP process and those that you pull out as a defense if the sales tax don't come in? How are you prioritizing those and determining what gets on that gray line list?
We'd have to actually get the other directors up here. They were allowed to make their own priorities as far as which projects in their departments they felt could fit in. If we have to hold back on them, that these would be the ones. So it was really each director made their own decision on that as far as their part. They knew they had a number they had to come up with for their department, and that's they identified these projects.
And you said that'll change monthly.
Yeah, we've had changes already in it where we've had a couple of good bids come in, and there was some money left, so we were able to go and do another project and move some money out of another place. So they'll move around, but the key is we've got to keep that reserve in place until June, July, August time frame, somewhere in there. Because what we don't want to have happen is get a project going and then have to stop the thing in the middle of it or something like that because we don't have the money.
Thanks, Gene.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Director Owenhurst. Next on the agenda is Sokup Park donation. Director Kearney.
Good afternoon, City Council members. Today we just want to share what we think is an incredible opportunity to add a new community park to our park system. And this is being made possible through tremendous generosity of the Jim Sokup family. And we also want to share a proposed sponsorship and partnership with South Dakota Game Fish and Park to develop this property in the very near term. And the way we look at this property, we really look at it as a win-win-win, so to speak. And a win for the city in that it provides a community park on the city's west side to meet the parks and recreation needs in this growing area of our town. And it's also a win for Game Fish and Parks and the Jim Sokup family. Jim Sokup is in attendance today, along with Todd St. Salver with Game Fish and Parks. And both of them will talk about how this is a win for them a little later in the presentation. To give you a little background on the project, for several years now the Sokup family has intended to donate about 80 acres to the city. That consists both of land and water near the corner of West 12th Street and TLS Road. The property for many years has served as a gravel mining operation for Sokup Construction, and that mining activity is now complete, and it's ready for a new use to benefit the community. Over the past year or so, we've been working on a concept plan, knowing that the mining activity has basically been completed, and working on a concept plan to determine how we see the park developing. We did this in cooperation with Jim Sokup, with Game Fish and Parks, as well because we all had the same vision for the property as a community park with an urban fishery focus. And today, we have here today John Jacobson with Confluence. Confluence is a landscape architectural firm in Sioux Falls. John and his firm has done quite a bit of work for us, including McKinnon Park that he's working on with us this year. And so I'd like to have John walk through the site and the concept plan and talk you through the proposed property and the proposed development that we're talking about today.
Good afternoon, Council. John Jacobson. Feel free to stop me here as I'm going through things. I'm going to back up, there you go, to the overall view of the property. I think one of the things that's really important for the Parks Department when someone comes to them with a land donation is to make sure that it fits into the overall infrastructure of the park system. And as Don mentioned, this is a win-win in a lot of different scenarios, but specifically because it fits in really well. One, as Don mentioned, we need a west side community park in this growing area. But two, as Todd from the state will get into, This gives us, the City of Sioux Falls, a new opportunity for a new form of recreation as far as having an urban fishery, and that's the reason why the water is important. And then lastly, this particular park will incorporate itself into the bike trail system really well. So if you look at that blow-up context map right there, you'll see 12th Street and the TLS Road is the major intersection. There are 2 ponds overall in the park, and then off to the southeast you'll see the existing Legacy Park. Right to the east of Legacy Park you'll see that dark blue line, dark blue solid line. That's the new Legacy bike trail that was built just last summer. The red dash that extends across 12th Street and up to the north is the current proposed plan for the bike trail extension per the new Community Greenway Bike Trail Master Plan. So that you'll see then that the new proposed park is just to the west of there and a very easy connection to that. Now we'll flip to the blow-up concept plan. This particular plan is an overview of eventually what everybody wants to have be developed there. Obviously, there's the 2 main existing ponds to the south, and the other main landform that's really important in this is you'll kind of see the upper northern third. You'll see a solid black line that kind of runs through the portion of the park. There you go. Just along to the north all the way to the edge of the park property, that's an old construction landfill that dates back to essentially the beginning of time. And so that's one more reason why using this site as a recreation place is really important, because obviously as a landfill it's very inappropriate for any other kind of development. So what we want to do is make sure that the bulk of our physical infrastructure happens to the south of that line to try to avoid any possible future problems. The park will be serviced by a main entry road which comes from the north. It'll come down to a parking lot. The parking lot will have a restroom adjacent to it, picnic shelter, playground, the typical things that we do as a community for our community parks, but then also it will have access to a number of fishing piers. There'll be an additional trail roadway that goes off to the east to turnaround, which allows disabled and vehicle access to the east pond. And then there'll be a pathway that goes around the entire series of ponds, which will go to 4 primary fishing piers of different sizes, essentially 2 20-foot piers and 2 40-foot piers. The important thing to note on this plan, and Todd with the state and Don will emphasize this more here in a minute, but Games Fish and Parks has a certain amount of money which they want to put into this project this year. So that'll essentially be the first phase. The first phase will consist of building the access road and parking, providing a restroom, providing at least 2 fishing piers, and then access to the water. I'm sure you're probably thinking about some of the technical rules for the water. I'll let Don and Todd talk about that, but right now the vision is for people to have non-motorized boats and things in there. So there is a boat ramp, but essentially that'll be for kayakers and canoes, but mainly is for service because the Games Fish and Parks will be constantly 2 times a year restocking these ponds to maintain their adequacy as a recreation source. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the big overview of everything. And then after that first phase, obviously, we'll be coming in there with more improvements and bike trail connections and the playground amenities and all that stuff. So thank you.
Any questions? Okay, Mr. Carney.
Thank you. Thanks, John. And as John mentioned, we did want to point out that it is a former construction debris landfill. When we say construction debris, we talk about brick, block, wood, those types of things come out of homes, those types of things. So, but knowing that, we have done some preliminary work in that regard. Anytime you're dealing with a potential landfill or former landfill site, you want to make sure that you're protecting your interests long term and you don't have any concerns in the future. And so we have Game Fish and Parks last year did go out and do some flesh testing of the fish. There weren't any concerns with regard to that. They've also did some netting to just identify the types of fish that are in there. There's some big ones in there, as I understand, according to Jim, that have been caught, and could be a great fishery if the council is supportive of this project. The other thing that we've done here recently, too, is we've done some additional soil borings. We want to make sure that we put the parking lots in the right spots, and then we also just want to make sure there aren't any contaminants or anything like that. And so we've got some preliminary results back from those, and those the ones that we've gotten back are clean. We still have a couple others that are waiting to be submitted to us, and then we also will probably do some water quality testing as well. But we're pretty comfortable with the quality of the fishery that will be available, the water quality, so we're very comfortable with regard to that. But having said that, we'll be working with our city attorney's office and our Public Works Environmental Division, too, to make sure there are any other steps to go through. Obviously, we'll do that as well. But now, I'd really like to turn it over to Jim. Jim has been the mastermind behind this whole project, really making this possible park donation a reality. And just like to ask him to talk a little bit more about the background on the park, and also propose or suggest the name of the park, and also the ponds that are in the park currently, and what some of the names of those could be as well. Jim?
As you know, my name is Jim Sokup. A couple things with this. First of all, with the landfill, it was actually, when I purchased the property, the landfill was already closed. So it was a city landfill for construction debris. It was not like the current landfill we have out on 41st Street. This one was for construction rubble, but I did not operate or own the landfill at the time. I bought the property after the landfill was closed, and it was actually run by the city years ago. So with that, I guess the win side of it for me, I guess, is that I was able to mine the aggregate off this property, and in doing so, we created the ponds. And at this point, I have 3 other ponds out there, and a guy can only fish so much. So I really don't have the need for that pond, and I think it would be a great asset for the city. There is some wonderful fishing out there. My kids, my friends' kids, and they have a great time out there. It's great fishery. It's just there's a lot of wildlife out there. It's just a fun time. So we just felt that it would be a great asset to the city on the west side to be able to give this to the city. The name itself, we were looking at calling it Family Park, and I think that kind of represents 2 things here. First of all, family is something that's really important in my life, and for those that know me, and I know some of you know my background, but my sisters, my brother, and my parents all live in Sioux Falls, and so our family's pretty close. There's been a saying that if you get one soak up, you get them all. So it's one of those things. And so family's an important thing in our life. And cousins, and we have there's actually 2 ponds out there. We were looking at calling one Cousin's Pond, and the other one is Grandpa's Pond. Grandpa's Pond is pretty simple. My dad built it, and he built that one pretty much day in, day out, probably 60, 70 hours a week for all summer and then some. So we figured we'd name that one Grandpa's Pond, and the other one was Cousin's Pond, which really goes back to all the, I guess if you want to call it, the grandkids are in Sioux Falls, and we all refer to them as the cousins. So with that, that's kind of how we came up with the name. But the most important thing is that we want this to be a family park. We want this to be a park that families use, that kids can use, and that's kind of the theme behind it. So it's kind of got a double meaning, I guess. Kind of takes our name out of it, which we kind of prefer that. So with that, I guess I don't know if there's any questions that you guys might have for me.
Councilor Brown?
Jim, not a question, but just it always amazes me how generous some people are to the city, and just I really want to thank you for a really generous thing to offer to people who maybe wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to fish and enjoy the outdoors. So thank you very much.
Sure, and I can tell you one thing, the city has been wonderful to us. Our family is, we moved here in the early 70s, and things have just gotten better every year for us. So it's just kind of one way of us giving back to the city. So,
Councilor Bannigan?
Jim, I want to reiterate what Vernon said. Not only do you do tremendous work here for the city, but I know you've done unbelievable and awesome work from many, many charities and nonprofits in this community. There's very few that you don't see a Sukup name involved with, and even our own project at the center you were very involved with, and 2 o'clock in the morning I've known him to show up to help me with snow removal. There's just an incredible dedication, and we're very appreciative of your support.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I'd have one. I just have a question, Jim. You know, as most people know, you and I have go back some time, but the donation of the property is a wonderful thing. But I think to find the true economic sacrifice in Jim's case is to think about the waterfowl and the fish that he has harvested off that ground in the last 10 years.
Now, wait a minute. We've done catch and release with the fish, but the waterfowl is a different story.
Yeah, I think I recall a number of ducks and geese falling over those ponds. So.
Yes. So, and there could be a goose problem with this. I'll just forewarn you all. So, but that'll be the Parks Department's problem.
So you left some, did you?
Oh, yeah. So.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim, and again, just a wonderful offering to the city. I just kind of wanted to go through a little bit more about the logistics of the plan and how we are hoping to be able to move forward. And we're looking to do this, and talking with Jim over the last couple of years, we were going to try to just incorporate this into our 2010 budget process, but we were recently contacted by Game Fish and Parks about $400,000, or up to $400,000, that they could redirect towards this project. Todd St. Salver has been involved in this project for quite a while. I know he's known Jim for quite a while, and consulted, I think, actually with Jim on some of the stocking programs that have gone on there. And in order for us to be able to take advantage of the dollars, their fiscal year is June 30th, and we'd like to be able to try to facilitate an agreement not only with Game Fish and Parks for the improvements that they would give to the city, but also with Jim at that same time. And I thought it might be helpful if Todd could come up and talk a little bit about why urban fisheries are important to urban settings such as Sioux Falls, and just give a little background from his perspective on how he thinks South Dakota Game Fish and Parks can benefit from this project too. Todd?
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. It's my first time in front of you, so it's an honor. It's no secret that the United States is becoming an urban society. People are moving from our rural areas to the cities, even in good old South Dakota, where farming rules and we're still the outdoor mecca of the nation. But demographics clearly show that even in South Dakota, people are moving to the cities. And thus, our youth are starting to be cut off from their outdoor heritage. Not as many rural youth are being brought up by their parents to enjoy the outdoors anymore. And so an opportunity like this is fantastic. It'll help us continue to recruit our youth and carry forward the outdoor heritage in South Dakota. It'll also provide access and assistance to our single parents and families that live in Sioux Falls. Give them easy opportunities to a resource like this, and it also gives our local sportsmen's groups an outdoor learning center to mentor and take care of the youth of the city. So it's just a phenomenal opportunity to keep South Dakota's largest city actively involved in preserving our outdoor heritage and the fishing legacy in South Dakota. So just a wonderful, we as well can't thank Jim enough and his family for bringing this opportunity forward, and we hope we'll always be looking for means to do this. So basically, the management plan, or the initial management thoughts for Game Fish and Parks, Don mentioned some of this. Initially we planned to stock 14,000 catchable rainbow trout each year. Those would be 9 to 11 inch fish. We would stock 7,000 in the spring and 7,000 in the fall. Those would be kind of a bonus fishery type thing. They're cool water fish. They may not survive the summer, but for the warm water periods, we would also be stocking white bass, channel catfish, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, crappies, and bluegills as needed, and what to maintain a high-quality fishery during the warm water months. We will monitor the fishery by conducting a creel survey, which will monitor the amount of use that the park gets. It will monitor the fish catches, and we'll also monitor angler satisfaction. We'll ask questions on how people are doing out there and how much fun they're having, so we can adjust our management strategies if needed. We will also conduct an annual fish population survey each year just to monitor the fish abundance in the pond, make sure the fish are healthy, make sure they're growing well, and make sure everything's just going well out there. So, and we'll also do a little bit of habitat manipulation, put some brush piles and rock reefs out there to diversify the habitat and to attract the fish into locations where anglers can have a better chance of catching them. So. Again, it's an honor to be involved with something like this, and it's really the first major dedicated urban fishing program that Game Fish and Parks is engaging with a city. So we're excited. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Knudsen?
I want to make sure I say your name correctly. Is it St. Sauver?
St. Sauver.
St. Sauver. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for the partnership. It sounds like a great family project, and I am so appreciative of philanthropists in our community like Sioux family. Wow. It's no wonder it's so much fun to live here. But anyway, I was just curious a couple of things. One, so would it be possible that there'd be kind of a collaboration with the current outdoor campus, too, and some of their programs to use the new urban fishery area?
I have mentioned it to them, and yes, there may be the potential for programs like this.
Okay.
We also have a very active Walleyes Unlimited chapter in Sioux Falls here, and the 2990 Sportsman's Club, two of the most active, and they love to do kids events and things like that too. So I see unlimited potential for programs and special events like that in a situation like this.
And then not a question, but just a comment. It'd be fun if all of that is ready before we can get all of our banks stabilized over at Coble Lake. Maybe we can move our paddle boats over there for a while and use those paddle boats, because I love those paddle boats.
Councilor Jameson?
Todd, could you explain the rules on fishing again, on the age before you need a license, and just how that interacts with how the people in Sioux Falls can really enjoy that fishing?
Okay. You do not need a fishing license to fish in South Dakota till you're age 16. So youth under the age of 16 can fish without a license, and anybody over the age of 16 would need a fishing license, and those license dollars go to administer, pay for all the services that Game Fish and Parks provides. Not specifically for this project, but for all South Dakota projects.
Any other questions? Well, again, I'd say thank you very much to the Sokup family, not only Jim, but Angie and Ryan and Lizzie and Ashley and sisters Joan and Judy and brother Jason and parents Carl and Marietta and the rest of the clan, as you all get. Number of families will be able to enjoy the outdoor experience because of you guys.
Yeah, just to wrap up, I just wanted to let you know that our thoughts, if there are any concerns with us being able to move forward, because the council, because of the naming, would be required to approve the gifting agreement as well, so that we would work with the park board and then bring that to the city council for your final approval. And then we would also be working on internally with an agreement with Game Fish and Parks to get that gifting agreement in place for us to be able to actually do the improvements later this year or early next year, depending on how the engineering can get put together and how quickly that can happen. So, and with that, I'd be just open for other questions that you might have. Thanks
very much. Next item on the agenda is a special report by Lead Internal Auditor Rich Oaksel on the consultant expenditures.
Thank you, City Council. I just want to reiterate what Ty had said, that he appreciates the work we do, and we work well together in the about the 2.5 years that we've had an internal audit department. We try to coordinate closely. In the fall, when Melissa White is here to do some preliminary audit work, we sit down and talk for several hours about what we've been doing during the year, share our audit reports, and kind of coordinate things. So I think we work well together, and they kind of take the big picture, focusing on the financial statements, and we look at the smaller picture. Councilor Staggers, you mentioned the cash, and you'll have, I think, 3 reports in a couple of weeks on cash handling, so we do those reports. Try to do 2 to 4 of those type of audits every year. Now, as far as this report here, this was a special project. We try to set aside about 10% of our time each year for special things that come up that we don't put in our annual audit plan. We've done one each year now. We did one in 2007 on the Convention Center Management Agreement. Last year we did one for Bob Litz on the code enforcement, and this year this is for Councilor Staggers at a special request. And this was approved at the January meeting of the Audit Committee. And it was quite simple. The purpose was to determine the amount of money spent by the City of Sioux Falls for consultants for the years 2006 through 2008, and the budget amount for 2009. And then we also provided some additional information on professional services in general. And we do not include any opinion or recommendations in this report. It was strictly just to come up with some information. As far as the results, on page 2, there's the results. The consultant expenditures in 2006 were approximately $600,000. In 2007, about $850,000. In 2008, about $1 million. In page 4 and 5 are the details on that. And you can see the department, the vendor, or the consultant, a very brief description of the work, and then the actual costs. Now, if you turn forward now to page 3, that was simply information in general about professional services. That's not necessarily consultant work. That's just some general information about what we spent for, say, attorney fees, information technology fees, publishing and engineering. That's something in the general ledger we call professional services, and so we just want to put that in there and give examples of what things the city purchases in that expense category, with the caveat that, for example, in that category that says consultants, that is not necessarily consulting work as defined on, I believe, on page 1 of the report. We had a very specific definition of a consultant that we agreed with Councilor Staggers. That was the definition we would use. Even with that definition, that's pretty well defined. Reasonable people can still have differences of opinion on whether work that we paid for would be consulting work or simply a professional services contractor. Now on page 6 and 7, you can see that was what has been budgeted for 2009 for consultant work according to our definition. And we got the main source for that information was the mayor's detailed budget book, and we just listed the department, kind of what's in that detailed book, and then the amount budgeted for 2009. And the total was about $815,000. And we do have a few notes there at the top of page 6 referring back to some other information there. For example, attorneys that we hired to do work on various bond issues. Information about the Washington Pavilion on the windows, that we hired an architecture group to do the design and the construction administration on the windows, the historically accurate windows. And so we put a little detail in there about that. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments that you might have.
Councilor Knudsen?
Mr. Oakesall, from a, regional city standpoint, if you know this answer, is do other cities in the Midwest, use consultants at about the same level we do, or less, or more, or whatever?
I would, just personal opinion, I would say we're probably below average, but I can't say that definitively because we didn't do any work on that. So.
And then one other question. And then another question I have that now that the legislature has finished its work for this year and they passed a bill regarding, no bid, contracts and so forth, and I realize those laws do not go into effect until July 1st, but will that new law that was sponsored by Representative Noel Hamill from Mitchell, will that affect how the city does any of this as far as contracts with consultants going forward?
I do not know that,
okay.
But I think that'd be a good question to ask our purchasing department in the future as a new law takes effect. So.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Staggers?
Yes, I have a number of questions for Rich. And first of all, let me say thank you very much for spending all the time doing this, because this is the first time we've ever gotten any information since I've been on the council about consultant fees. The first question I have is in regard to methodology. You mentioned that you reviewed the memo dated November 28, 2008 from the mayor to council leadership concerning consultant work. I guess I'm not familiar with that memo. What's that all about?
I understood that you had seen that memo. It was I certainly council leadership. I believe Bob Litz and Pat Costello had received a copy of that memo. I was provided that by the mayor's office, and we reviewed. In there was, I believe, a 3-page memo. I believe it was prepared by finance. I would assume it was prepared by finance department. That was a starting point, Pat.
Yeah, that letter came out, and Gene, maybe if you can help me if I'm wrong, but that came out some time ago, and I was under the impression the entire council had gotten a copy of it, but did not.
Yeah.
Gene, do you know, was that prepared by your office, or?
I'm not sure. There was a memo prepared in, I believe, like October.
Right, yeah.
In that time frame.
Did that just go to the fiscal committee, or?
I made the rash assumption that it got distributed to the council, but I don't know. I guess we delivered it. Who did we deliver it to?
I was not given a copy. I think it was just leadership, I thought.
Yeah,
but I had not seen it.
I believe
so.
the memo was addressed from the mayor to council leadership.
Yeah, if I would have received it, I would have given it to the council per leadership's instructions. But I had not seen it at all.
And I think the date of it in here says November 28, 2008. I just noticed that.
Yeah, that was the date of the memo then.
I don't know if the council leadership still has that.
I could look.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we. I don't think we got any.
I have a copy, and the mayor's office provided that to me. So
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can distribute that to the council if you'd like. So.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also, just going page by page, Rich. On page number 3, I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to make sure I'm correct. When it has the consultants, the numbers are different than on page 2. And is that just definitional differences?
Yes, yeah, that would be definitional differences. When something is categorized as a consultant expense in the general ledger, it may not necessarily mean that is it. Fits the definition that we had on page 1. It's what the category that maybe the department preparing the purchase order used. We kind of put those professional services in that 2,200 category. It's that's just the way it's done. So when it says consultant, I wouldn't read too much into that category. It's a professional service. That's about as far as you can say.
Okay. Also, though, on page number 3, I don't know if you have any insight and can give it a response to this, but I'm going to go ahead and ask anyway. and that is on the professional services. The total for 2006 was $16 million plus. Also for 2007, $16 million plus. And then for 2008, $19 million plus. And then for 2009, $34 million plus. And it seems like every category, professional services for 2009, every one of them has gone up, especially engineering by 100%. Any insight as to why we have such a dramatic increase?
At some point in the report, I think I pointed out that you have to be careful when you're comparing that, because when you're looking at 2006 to 2008, you're looking at actual expenditures, and 2009 is just the appropriation. A lot of times we don't spend the entire appropriation, so I would exercise caution in comparing what you actually spent, say, in one year to what you budgeted in a future year, because we often don't spend all that's budgeted.
Okay. And then on page number 4, I noticed underwater, advanced engineering environmental. For 2006, this is actual cost now.
These are actual, yes.
Yes. For 2006, $100,000 plus. For 2007, $170,000 plus. And then for 2008, $121,000 plus. And the scope of the work performed was a rate study, and I just assumed it was helping us to determine what the water rate should be. But it seems like an enormous cost for a water rate study. Is there more to that than meets the eye?
I'm not aware of the scope of their work, but I assume it was for Public Works and Administration to determine what we need to do for rates for the various utility services. But
yeah, because
I assume they did quite a bit of work, but I don't know the full extent of what their scope was. So.
Yeah, because it looks like they spent, almost $400,000. And then also for this coming budget year, we have $50,000 planned for another water rate analysis, and so I guess we'll just have to ask Public Works.
I would ask Mark Cotter about that.
Okay.
Yes.
And then also too, when we have these consultant fees, the numbers that are given, does that include any transportation costs we might pay for them, or any hotels or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
That, from what I saw, though, it's pretty limited. I mean, we do pay for travel. It didn't seem excessive to me.
Okay.
But yes, that is included in the cost.
Okay. Let's see. And then also, I think this is the last question I have. What is the process for the city determining which consultants we're going to get? Do we offer proposals?
That's a good question. There will often be, but not always be, an RFP where they'll solicit firms to submit an RFP, and then typically there might be a committee, kind of an ad hoc committee, to review those proposals and decide who is the best. Obviously, the cost is one factor, but it's certainly not the only factor. They look at experience and reputation and degree of specialization. It's going to be different for each case. It's not always going to follow the exact same procedure, but that is a typical way that we would select a professional service or a consultant.
Okay.
Yes.
Once again, thank you very much for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Brown?
Rich, in looking at the numbers, I think it's also important to note that the projected number for 2009, to put it into perspective, that's 0.2% of our total budget.
Yes, it's an extremely small portion of the total budget, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Maybe I should just clarify. We're this percentage of our budget for this year, we're basing on $412 million budget. Is that?
I would say, Vernon, was that what you're using for the
$412 million?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to Sioux Falls Transit with Deborah Gaikowski.
Hi, good afternoon. Deborah Gaikowski, Transit Planner with the city. I'm coming to you today because the transit system is thinking about or proposing to change its Route 11. and it is considered a major reduction in services, so it's required that we come to the City Council and present you with the details. So I'd just like to tell you a little bit about it. Route 11 is our mall shuttle. It is a free route right now, and it runs pretty much every half hour starting about 9:45 in the morning to about 5:45 in the afternoon. What we'd like to do is reduce this service to every hour instead of every 1/2 hour. We have had an extreme number of requests for services to the southern portion of the city. So we're proposing to do a Route 12 on the alternating half hours of this Route 11. And the Route 12 would cover areas to the south and then to 69th Street, so we would hit Avera Midwest Cancer Institute, Avera Midwest Psychiatric Institute, and then Avera Hospital, the heart hospital down there. And then we would go over to Western Avenue and pick up some major points over there. I am not showing you Route 12. We're still working on that a little bit, because the main reason I'm here today is to talk to you about the reduction of service to Route 11. After we came up with this idea of doing this so that we could provide the other service and not affect our budget at all, we approached the mall management and asked them, if they'd be on board with this. When we did that, they actually asked us if we could get our bus off of their property because it's causing some congestion issues. So what we did was, and what's shown on the map, you can see on the west side of the mall, we're proposing to take off that entire portion of the route. So we would basically run up to the north, and when we are on our way back south, go into the mall at the JCPenney entrance, stop at a shelter there, continue service to the south, and then out at that light there on the east side of the mall. So we would get in there, but not too far. And one of the main reasons for that is there really is no accessible route from the sidewalk on Louise into the mall area. There's no sidewalk, only driveways. So if we get our riders into there, they at least have sidewalk to get around the mall area. Another thing that we are proposing is to start charging a fare for this route. Right now it is free. In the past, it's always been kind of geared towards the shoppers of the Empire Mall. By taking it out of the Empire Mall, we feel that now it's more of kind of a regular route. And just to be consistent with our other routes, we'd like to start charging our $1 fare for the route. So this is what we're proposing. As I said, per our executive orders, if we have a major reduction in service, we bring it to the council. I'm presenting the details to you today with that, and then I would bring it to a full council meeting in a couple of weeks if you're in agreement.
Councilor Knudsen?
Thank you for being with us today. Would you remind me, or I shouldn't say remind me, would you just teach me, how many people usually ride this bus, and just talk numbers a little bit for us?
This particular route, our ridership is really considerably lower than our other routes. In January, we had about 2,400 rides for the month. In February, we had about 2,100. And in comparison, we have some routes that have 11,000 per month. So this is one of our lowest. The absolute lowest one is Route 19, which goes out to the Southeast Tech, but the times that it runs are a lot less than this one. And this one runs, like I said, continually every half hour.
Let me ask one other question. And do you know, in the region, especially when it's providing really convenient services for retail stores in that particular area, would there ever be a possibility that the Empire Mall would be able to financially help us with this wonderful service? Or is that never done? I don't know.
There are a lot of places that do contract for services like that. The Empire Mall, I guess, has not shown interest in doing that with this shuttle. We presented the fact that we'd like to start charging a fare, and they had no problem with that.
Councilor Bennigan?
Deborah, this probably has nothing to do with the Route 11, but could you give me a short update or give us a short update on where we're at with the RFP for the management contract?
Last Friday was the final day for any companies to ask questions. That's about where we're at right now. So now they've got a few more weeks to get their proposals in. And then after that, of course, we'll have quite a process of reviewing those and going through the selection process.
What's the deadline for that transaction?
I don't have the exact deadline. I know we hope to have a new management company chosen by about mid-June.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, Deb, has there been any thought of just getting rid of this Route 11 and devoting all the resources to other routes that might be more beneficial?
This is the only route that goes up north and serves the Walmart and, you know, those areas up north, Menards, all that. And I think it's important to continue to service those businesses up in that area. So.
But how long have we had Route 11? Just for a few years, haven't
Just
we?
since the Southwest Center opened.
Okay, and that was, I can't remember.
About 2005.
2005, so 4 years.
Yeah.
Councilor Anderson?
Deborah, in other conversations we've had, we also had spoke about a route up by northwest area of town over by the Votech. Are we looking at that? What are our plans for that at this time?
We are still looking at that. We do have the route that goes out there to Southeast Tech right now. Of course, the University Center has just opened up. The University Center, the old campus, has contacted us and said they've got people that would like to shuttle from one campus to the other. So we are in the process of doing a survey. The students are filling that out online, so we'll see what kind of an interest we have in transit services up there. Esurance and First Premier have just finished a survey, so once we get all of that information together, we'll see what we can do. There's always a possibility of maybe a shuttle from the Southwest Center out there rather than a continuation of the route. We're just trying to see what we can do with what we've got and the money that we've got to use.
Okay. Also, I've gotten a couple calls and had a discussion with Mr. Kingsley from Yellow Cab. He has some concerns about some paratransit scheduling, I believe. Are you aware of these?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And what we are doing is, as of April 1st, we're starting what's called non-ADA paratransit service, meaning between the hours of 8 and 10 p.m., between Monday and Friday, any general ridership person could call up, make a reservation the day before to ride the paratransit service between the hours of 8 and 10. Between those hours, technically, transit only has to provide that service up until 8 o'clock. So after that, we can use the service as we wish, really. Traditionally, we've always used it just for paratransit service. The state has grant funds for providing additional services or new services for the disabled, the elderly, and the low-income populations. So we did receive a grant to help us with this. So anybody that wants to ride at that time, they have to follow the same rules as our regular paratransit, meaning they have to make the reservation, they have to be charged $4 for the fare, just like the paratransit in the evening hours, and they're confined to the paratransit service area. The paratransit riders do have priority, so if we fill up, we have to contact the fixed route riders and let them know that they're not going to get a ride. That would happen the day before, though, because they review all the reservations and would contact these people the day before.
I do want to tell you, I know Mr. Kingsley is planning on coming to next Monday's meeting, so you may want to...
He's very concerned that we're in direct competition with him, but it's really not comparing equal services because you don't have to make a reservation for cab service. They come, within minutes sometimes, and it's a little bit different. We're hoping to serve the low income, the elderly, and the disabled. I understand that anybody can make the reservation, but traditionally transit users have kind of fallen into that category anyway, especially in this community.
Can I ask you to contact Mr. Kingsley?
I have spoken with him.
Okay, and speak to him again so that maybe we can resolve his issues before Monday next week?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Deb, I remember some time ago there was thought about raising the price of the fare. Is that still in the works, or is that gone by the wayside?
We haven't addressed that recently. I think that we just wanted to deal with other issues at this time, so we have no intentions of doing that quite yet.
How long has it been $1?
It's been a long time. It's been like 1996. something like
1986.
that. Right, pretty close to that. Maybe it's 98.
Councilor Knudsen?
Deborah, I apologize for this. In my notes, I wrote down when I was asking about the ridership, and you mentioned the 2,400 people and the 2,100, and then I forgot to write down what period of time that was. Would you please repeat that for me?
The first one was for the month of January, and the second one was for the month of February.
Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Councilor Anderson?
Deborah, could you also tell us about our new incoming general manager?
Yes, I hope to have her here today, but she wasn't able to come. Today's her first full day in Sioux Falls. She's got a vast amount of experience in transit management. She was up in Alaska for quite a while. I think I sent out the resume to everyone, so you probably read it. But I'm really excited to have her on board. She's just got a lot of great ideas, some marketing ideas, and I think it's going to be a nice change.
I've had the chance to meet her by accident, actually, and had a great conversation with her. Just the energy and just the feeling you get from her after speaking to her, that she wants to come in here on the ground running and try to take care of things that are happening down there. I really want to give her my full support.
And I think she's got a great system to come into. You know, we've got a great safety record, and our ridership is continually going up, so it'd be great.
Councilor Jameson?
Deborah, this looks like a pretty good compromise for the change in route. What does this do for your time? When you're having a bus go every half hour, you're freeing up a bus or two?
Well, that's kind of what I was mentioning, that when it's not doing this on the alternating half hours, we'll go to the south and hit some of these do another loop down there. So you're really not wasting any time. You're using that same amount of time, but you're going just south instead of up north.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
That's it for the presentations. I'll open up again for open discussion. If there's none, then we will adjourn, and our next meeting will be next Monday.